It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me once again is Jacqueline Guild. She's the Director of Environmental Policy for the City of Annapolis. She wasn't that when last we met. She was the Executive Director of the Chesapeake Legal Alliance. She's an attorney, lots of experience with law, litigation, and environmental policy. Thanks for joining me again, Jackie.
Thank you for having me, Donna.
I have a bunch of questions. I have some from members of the community because I put it out there on social media, and we'll get to those. But I guess the big one right now hanging over us is, and I'm sure you saw this, Rob Savage wrote an editorial for the city, for the Capitol, and he's the alderman for Ward 7. Our environment deserves a dedicated department. He says, I've been happy to have Mayor Gavin Buckley as a strong partner in those efforts, referring to managing stormwater and conserving our forests. Unfortunately, with the introduction of his budget, he risked taking the city backwards and stymieing our environmental policy for many administrations to come by proposing to completely gut and dissolve our Office of Environmental Policy. You're head of this office once again. Oh, is he right? Is he wrong? What do you feel about that? Do you have comments on this? What can you say?
Well, by moving my position into the mayor's office, it allows us to work more closely together and collaborate and share ideas. And it elevates my office to the mayor's level of importance. Rob's concerns are that the environment somehow may suffer, that the things that the kind of environmental lens that we put on projects will no longer be there if you don't have a dedicated professional looking at the environment, because some of the positions would go to Public Works and Planning and Zoning.
So you're saying this will have absolutely no impact on the environment or the work that you've already done to help our community?
I don't know that.
Okay.
This is a new approach, and it's one of those situations that we won't know till we try.
Are you concerned?
I have some concerns. I've been working in this area, as you pointed out, for over 30 years, and I have a lot of experience with policy and management of environmental issues. I think, we have an opportunity right now with a new director of planning and zoning to put someone in that position that's very environmentally minded. Not that Pete Gutwald is not. It's just a very large department with a lot going on. So the Mayor Buckley is very dedicated to the environment. So the idea is that with that focus, it would not just trickle down, but be directed to be a very strong environmental focus on the environment.
What have you accomplished with the mayor since this position started and this office started?
So my position is I started in my position almost a year ago, May 17 of 2018. And since then, we have completed the application for the no discharge zone so that there cannot be discharge of waste from marine sanitation devices from boats into the waters of Annapolis and in the harbor. We have passed the styrofoam bill. We were first, then the county, then the state of Maryland. And that goes into effect September 1st. So we're getting out educational materials to the businesses that are affected very soon.
Don't let me forget to go on with the list. But since you just mentioned styrofoam, who does this affect? How many people does it affect? Is it businesses, schools, and...
It's businesses and schools,
okay.
And it's convenience stores, grocery stores, any establishment that handles food and would before put it on styrofoam or package it in styrofoam, the clamshells you have for takeout, none of that will be allowed anymore. So the law was passed last, I believe, October, and we provided a grace period for businesses to use up their supplies. And then once it goes into effect, no longer will anyone be allowed to use styrofoam.
And are there styrofoam police? Who's enforcing it?
So the county has a partnership with us on it through their health department. They do health inspections, and they will notify the city of a violation, and then the current Office of Environmental Policy is tasked by code to follow up and then issue a citation if necessary.
And is it a monetary citation?
Yes, it's $100 for the first offense. A second or recurring ongoing offense is $200.
Okay, so there's definitely a push to make sure everyone knows about this and has the proper, whatever it is, cardboard or plastic to take over for the styrofoam containers.
Right. There are other options. There are paper options, cardboard options, as you mentioned. There are compostable plastic options, and those will have to be used going forward.
Very good. Okay, back to the list.
So back to the list. So we've also had a stormwater resolution that the City Council approved of that requires greater treatment at development sites, both for redevelopment projects and and first-time development projects, new development. We also, the no net loss amendments to the Forest Conservation Act were passed so that there has to be tree-for-tree replacement at development sites. So we're doing greater forest protection, and that helps us increase our forest canopy. We have a goal of reaching a 50% forest canopy in the City of Annapolis. We're about 42% right now, so this helps get us there.
To go back to Rob Savage's editorial here, he wrote, this has resulted in a number of implementation issues regarding core environmental programs for stormwater and forest. Our new no net loss of forest policy was improperly implemented, which resulted in one developer claiming no reforestation was required for 30 acres removed. Your take on that?
There was a technical manual that goes along with the Forest Conservation Act that was overdue to be updated, and with the no net loss amendment, there's worksheets that go with that technical manual. The worksheets were not corrected to reflect the no net loss amendment, and so that particular developer took advantage of that, but that was caught and corrected, and they have to change their proposal accordingly.
And where was that development?
This is the Providence Point development.
Okay, so for the people that say Forest Drive is not an accurate name anymore for a street, what do you say to that?
Well, there's a lot of development along Forest Drive. I've talked to people that lived there a long time, and they said at one time there was no stoplights from beginning to end until you hit Solomon's Island Road. So it's a popular area. It's close to the city. Some of it's within city limits, and over time it has become very developed. That is one reason why the residents there want to retain as much forest cover, but also they have issues they voiced that they actually become locked into their side streets because of all the traffic that would be generated by additional development.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio with Jackie Guild. She's the director of the Office of Environmental Policy for the City of Annapolis. What's next on the list? What's your biggest concern?
Well, our biggest concern, of course, is the water quality of our rivers and creeks. We have obligations that a federal government mandated by US EPA to do a certain amount of cleanup of sediment, nitrogen and phosphorus, so we have to take action to meet those goals. We have a permit, our sewer system and stormwater permit, that we have certain goals we have to meet, and part of that is reducing our impervious cover, that is the sidewalks, etc., where water cannot penetrate into the ground. So we have to reduce 20% of that. So stormwater is a big problem, and our water quality, and that's the biggest contributor to the pollution in our area. We don't have industry like Baltimore does. What we have are parking lots, suburban lawns, we have sidewalks, streets, and then we have the stormwater that's generated through development, and that causes a lot of sedimentation and other pollutants get into the water from development. So stormwater is a big concern. We're looking at our stormwater treatment laws in the city, as well as our sediment and erosion control laws, to see how they can be improved, particularly to deal with the severity and frequency of storm events that we're experiencing now. And in the past 10 years, that's really increased, and we expect it to only increase more. So we have to get our laws up to speed with the changes in the environment. Exactly. So the state sets minimum standards, and then the localities can create their own more stringent standards.
So are you looking for a culture shift through legislation?
Yes, so we want to do this through legislation. We want as many improvements that will benefit to our code, that will benefit the environment, to be codified so that they must be followed.
So water barrels, green roofs, no fertilizer, or certain types of fertilizer, septic systems updated, that kind of thing?
Yes, exactly. And also we are looking at how we can reduce our carbon footprint overall. So our buildings have already gone through an environmental audit added, and we have more energy efficient systems. We're replacing lights with LED lights. Our street lights will be replaced with more energy efficient lights. We're looking at putting in electric charging stations throughout Annapolis. We're looking at different points where we could put them, changing our fleet to electric cars and other alternative fuel cars. Any way we can find to reduce our carbon footprint. Stormwater is also an issue. I'm getting back to that a little bit with our nuisance flooding. A real issue at City Dock and throughout the area. So you probably know we have a new pump station that will be started to be constructed in 2020, and our storm sewer system will be updated.
If the grants come in.
If the grants come in, that's correct.
And is there a scenario for if the grants don't come in with the current administration? And you've written about the current administration, and states must step up if Trump muzzles the EPA. You've written editorials about this. This was in Delmarva, USA Today owned newspapers, yes? The opinion piece you wrote?
Oh, okay. Yes. This was 2017.
Right. So...
and the state is contributing to that project.
But is there a scenario if you don't get the grants? What's the plan B?
Well, the city is putting in a certain amount of money as well. I'm not certain what would happen at that point. You can't guarantee a grant, but we have very strong assurances that we will receive that grant. So that's what we're relying on at this point. There would have to be a plan B, and I'm not privy to that information. There may be, Public Works may have a plan with the city manager about how to approach that.
What are we doing for the problems of the business owners on Dock Street who are having to close more than ever before because tidal flooding is happening more than ever before? The canary in the coal mine, I keep saying, is Ryan, who owns Pip's Dock Street Dogs. He's asked repeatedly for the city to just look at his curb as a temporary fix for the height, and it's a seemingly easy, from my point of view, temporary fix for a problem that will ultimately require a much bigger and more expensive solution. The mayor, when he was first here after he was elected, I asked him about it. He said he'd look into it. On Friday, February 15th, asking Mitchell the status, she emailed me, checked in. Ellie Tierney and Mayor Buckley did visit Pips and are working on a solution. They may have something very innovative in the very near future. More to come, was what Mitchell wrote. And I checked in with Ryan at the beginning of this month, and he said he's yet to see anything.
I know that our engineers in Public Works are continually looking at short-term solutions. Now, we do have plans when we know a storm is coming and there's going to be a storm surge and flooding on the City Dock area to protect the businesses. Our Office of Emergency Management works with Public Works very closely. There's sandbagging and other devices that they put up to prevent water from getting into the buildings as much as possible.
Which does nothing for those businesses on Dock Street because the water keeps coming in. The sandbags.
And it's getting strong. You're correct that our events get stronger, but the Office of Emergency Management is working on improvement plans as well directly with Public Works. Now, I know that the south side of City Dock is going to be addressed starting in 2020, and the pump stations will go in, and the improvements to the storm system will occur to prevent the backflow from tidal flooding. On the north side, that's the second project they've designed, but it's not funded yet. So Public Works is currently looking into short-term solutions, and that's what you're referring to when the mayor says he's looking into it. That's something they know that they have to implement soon, very soon, and they're working on that right now.
We're going to take another short break. We will be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm in the studio with Jackie Guild. She's the Director of Office of the Environmental Policy for the City of Annapolis. We were just talking about tidal flooding and the problems that's created ongoing basis and more frequently than ever before for some of the businesses, especially along Dock Street. There is a solution that you know of that is in play, but not all the steps are implemented yet.
Right.
So tell me what they are.
So apart from the north side, which is getting the pump station and the improvements to the storm system, on the north side, which is the unfunded project, we are working on a short-term solution. There's one that has been devised. It hasn't been put out for bid yet, but it's very much like a sump pump kind of system that would pump the water back out into the harbor. So it's probably going to be ready this summer, but that's really to start working on it. But that's really subject to bids in the construction process.
Okay, and you say north side, that's the side where Pip's Duck Street Dogs is, the Duck Street businesses.
Right.
Some of the questions we've had from our Twitter followers and Facebook followers, from Rick. Why didn't the city pay more attention to the pollution and runoff into Spot Creek from the yacht club construction? Are there enough inspectors out there and enforcement people out there?
That is a problem. We don't have enough inspectors, and we have one stormwater engineer. However, in the budget that's proposed for 2020, another stormwater engineer would be added. And so these are the people that look at the permits, they look at the stormwater retention and treatment, and then we have one enforcement inspector at this time. I do not know if there are any more plans to add another.
Okay. From Ginny, how is the rampant development around Annapolis impacting our environment?
Well, what's happening, the biggest problem, as I mentioned, is stormwater, and development is part of that. It's not the only source of stormwater. We have sediment erosion control laws, and as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at those to see if we can make them more robust to handle the more severe and frequent storm events. So when it rains, then your sediment runs down and away, and everything, if you're on a steep slope, it runs into the water. And that's why we see muddy water often after a rain. The laws that we have in place and that are followed currently and enforced by our stormwater engineers and inspection staff are the state minimum. And they may not be as robust as we need them to be
As
currently.
you'd like them to be.
As I don't think they're as strong as they could be at this point. But that's something we need to look at to make sure if we change them that they will actually prevent what we want to stop the sediment from coming into the water. So we need to look at the technical and science side of it as well.
Foxworks Design on Twitter. Do you have any real influence on building? Seems lately we won't be happy around here until we've built out every square foot of space.
The mayor's plan is to not only allow smart growth, smart development that makes sense, but to also incorporate green space. And that is something that I have advocated to the mayor's office, is making sure that we have places for people to go and enjoy the outdoors once they move into the new buildings that are built. We're working on greenway connectivity so that people have places to recreate and can get from one green area to the next throughout the entire city. And that includes bike paths, walking paths, hiking paths.
And a bridge over Forest Drive.
And that is one plan that is being proposed, as a bridge over Forest Drive as well over Spa Road.
All right. From Gary, is the City of Annapolis doing anything to encourage or assist marinas to meet the Maryland Clean Air certification?
It is an area that we could look at. We don't currently have a plan to look at it.
Okay. Another question from me, because you might know that I'm into birds and did some reporting about some birds that died because of pesticide.
Right.
Because of a pesticide that was banned and secondary poisoning. So pesticides and herbicides, and any thoughts on those subjects?
Yes, I have met with Public Works about their application of pesticides, and they have reduced the use of certain pesticides, and the Director of Public Works and I discussed looking at what they're currently using and making sure that we're not using anything harmful.
Speaking of birds, city duck. As we know, feeding of ducks is bad for the water quality and it's bad for the birds. I had in the past talked to the mayor about either discontinuing it, putting signs up to warn people of the hazards. Any thoughts on that subject?
Yes, we were actually contacted by a resident about the hazards of feeding ducks bread, especially, which is bad for them. And we have looked into signs that other cities have used that give the information about why you don't feed the ducks and alternatives that you can feed the ducks. So we've looked into it and have looked at design and costs, and we were looking to whether it fits in the budget.
And when will we know that?
We should know that by the end of June.
Okay. What have I missed, Jackie? If you wanted a legacy to be left in the city of Annapolis, what would it be? I'm guessing it's not.
What we're looking at is a comprehensive view of the environment. Looking at everything that the city does and where it touches the environment and how we can make it better. So it's air, water, land as far as litter, as well as conservation, forestry, habitat. As you mentioned about birds, bee pollinators. We have a program for pollinator gardens, but to encourage more of that. And as well as our fisheries, which also supports our economic engine which is restaurants and tourism and visitors.
So you're a busy woman. You want to get it all done.
The environment it affects all of us in every way possible, and so there's a lot to look at.
Thank you very much for joining me today and for the work that you do.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We'll see you next week.